Well, good afternoon. It is now 20 to 3 in the afternoon here in Scotland. I realise it's quite a bit earlier in the morning over there across the Atlantic. A couple of articles relating to obviously the George Floyd terrible state of affairs over there. One that sort of reflects how worldwide the situation or awareness of George Floyd's murder. As I say, there are calls, like I mentioned yesterday, there are calls for it to be classed as first-degree murder, which for me would be absolutely fine, particularly when you consider that there were 3 people, 2 officers on his back and shoving on George Floyd's neck, and the autopsy, the second independent autopsy, has been discussed now. Its results, its findings have been made public. One of the interesting things that the physician that did the autopsy said, I saw on an interview, I haven't been able to find it since, the actual quote that was quite interesting was, when you hear George Floyd saying, I can't breathe, well, a lot of people are mistaken at that point into believing, well, you are breathing because you're able to speak. But that's not the case. Yes, you'll end up getting rid of some air as you, or at least as you try to breathe in. If you can't, I say with the 3 of them on, 2 on his back, 1 on his neck, it beggars belief that they thought that they were doing anything other than killing him. The way that they were positioned on him. Anyway, first of all, this is an article. I'll show you it and have a read through it. And so I think for me, it tends to highlight just how the hi Alice, hi, tends to show for me just how widespread knowledge of the case is. My thumbnail picture for the video is of the Liverpool football ground, Anfield. And Kick It Out is a movement here in the UK. Kick It Out, kick out racism. Particularly in the Football League, they've done great. They've made great improvements in kicking out racism. Chair of the movement, Sanjay Bandari, wants protests at Premier League games. And here we see the Liverpool squad taking a knee at Anfield training. So this is Anfield training, and they're all lined up, or they've all gone around the centre circle. So let's have a read what it says. The chairman of Kick It Out has urged every Premier League footballer to take a knee when the season resumes in protest against the killing of George Floyd by police in Minneapolis, adding that the Football Association should not punish players who use their platforms to call for social change. On a day when Liverpool's players went down on one knee around the Anfield centre circle to express solidarity with those protesting against Floyd's death, Sanjay said there was nothing political about footballers standing against racism. He also called on the German FA not to sanction Jadon Sancho, who is actually an English player playing in Germany, Ashraf Hakimi, Weston McKennie and Marcus Thuram for leading protests in the Bundesliga against police brutality in the US. The German FA has said it is investigating. Although the head of English football's anti-discrimination charity said he understood why Sancho was booked for lifting his shirt to reveal the message, "Justice for George Floyd," after scoring in Borussia Dortmund's win over Paderborn on Sunday. He argued it would be wrong for the England winger to face further punishment. And at the side here, Marcus Thuram and Jadon Sancho both pay tribute to George Floyd after scoring. Removing the shirt after scoring is a bookable offence in any form of football. Anyway, Bandari, who called on white players to join black teammates in making a stand, said there must be freedom to protest when the Premier League season resumes on the 17th of June. He questioned whether it would be a breach of rules around political messaging if players followed the example of Thuram, who went down on one knee after scoring for Borussia Mönchengladbach against Hertha Berlin. The dilemma for the game's authorities is whether players are contravening regulations by protesting against Floyd's killing. Hakami also showed a Justice for George Floyd message after scoring for Dortmund, and McKenna, who is Schalke's USA international, had the message on an armband. Bandari said there was nothing wrong with Thuram taking a knee, a symbolic protest against police brutality that the NFL player Colin Kaepernick used in 2016. So here's Jadon Sancho after scoring, revealing his shirt. I think he's written that on. Scoring the first goal of his hat-trick for Borussia Dortmund at Paderborn. I hope there will be a degree of leniency shown by the German authorities, Bandari said. I'm not sure how you can sanction Marcus Thuram. I don't think he's done anything wrong. He's just taken a knee. I wonder if that's the thing I would encourage if players want to protest. If you score a goal and take a knee, could everyone do that? Not just the black players, the white players too, everyone. Every player should do it. It should be teams doing it. You saw the Erling Haaland celebration after the first game back, where all the Borussia Dortmund players did the social distancing celebration. They could all take a knee. Racism's not about black players or brown fans. It's about all of us. Racism corrodes society, and we're all hurt by it. Everyone should want to demonstrate their solidarity and disgust. I would like to encourage the players to protest if they want to, but I would also like to encourage them to do it in a way that doesn't expose them to unnecessary sanction. If they could do that by taking a knee, well, if every player did that, it would be quite a powerful message. I would be interested to hear what the authorities thought of that, whether it would constitute a breach of the rules. To me, that is about demonstrating solidarity. FIFA have since released a statement stating it is up to competition organisers to decide whether to sanction players for protest messages, but urging them to use common sense and have in consideration the context surrounding the events. FIFA fully understands the depth of sentiment and concerns expressed by many footballers in light of the tragic circumstances of George Floyd's case. Football's global governing body said FIFA has repeatedly expressed itself to be resolutely against racism and discrimination of any kind. 2 years ago, the FA fined Pep Guardiola after the Manchester City manager wore a yellow ribbon in support of Catalonian independence. In 2014, the then Cologne player Anthony Uja was given a warning by the German football authorities after paying tribute to Eric Garner following his killing, and Bandari said leniency was also required in this situation. I would urge all the authorities and all the clubs to show a degree of understanding, he said. This is almost above politics. This is about right and wrong. This is someone who was killed on the streets by the police. This is about seeking justice for him and others like him. I don't see that as being political. That's human. I think the players understand that if they take the shirt off, they're going to get booked. As I said, that's just football in general. Everything is contextual. And in this context, I think it would be very harsh for a punishment to go beyond that. I'm not sure how something like taking a knee could expose you. Well, players are allowed to celebrate, so I don't see any problem with players taking a knee. And I think that's the kind of support that you really want to give and highlight that would be a fitting and proper tribute to George Floyd, rather than getting involved in any kind of rioting. However, the second article I wanted to share with you, I must say I was very impressed when I read this. So let's have a look at this next article. So, Houston police chief to Donald Trump. One wonders what kind of trouble he might get into for coming out with a comment like this. You just make sure that everything's catching up. I'm always wary about the fact that I don't want to share something and you not be able to see it. Yeah, I think we're all okay. So Houston, believe that's Texas. Is it not also where the some of the space craft land? I'm sure I've heard mention of that. Anyway, here we have Christiane Amanpour interviews art. It looks like avocado, but it's Acevedo. Acevedo, I can't help thinking that's got a hint of Latin American, Mexican, Latin American. So anyway, this is what the article says. A leaked call from US President Donald Trump's Situation Room was uncovered by CNN. In the call, Trump told US governors to dominate protesters. Responding to the comments, Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo told Trump to keep quiet and not put people's lives at risk. This is by Ahmed Yusuf. With the protests and riots in the US reaching fever pitch, US President Donald Trump's leaked call to governors across America to dominate and arrest and try people has left Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo telling the president to keep your mouth shut. The leaked audio was uncovered by CNN, where Trump said from the White House Situation Room to governors, "You have to dominate or you'll look like a bunch of jerks. You have to arrest and try people. You don't have to be too careful," he said. "It's a movement. If you don't put it down, it will get worse and worse. The only time it's successful is when you're weak, and most of you are weak." Houston Police Chief Acevedo was asked to respond to the leaked call by CNN's Christiane Amanpour, who put the question to Acevedo whether it was the right environment for police today to go out and dominate. Personally, I think it's absolutely appalling to suggest, as it did earlier on here, when he put, "You don't have to be too careful." I think you have to be very careful and try and build, the land of the free, the land of the brave. And you're on about oppressing the people. That's very, very, very dodgy ground. Anyway, let's carry on and see what else Acevedo has to say. He said, "Let me just say this to the President of the United States on behalf of the police chiefs in this country. Please, if you don't have anything constructive to say, keep your mouth shut, because you're putting men and women in their early 20s at risk. This is not about dominating. It's about winning hearts and minds. And let's be clear, we do not want people to confuse kindness with weakness." And I would say being oppressive towards demonstrators is actually cowardice on behalf of the leadership. He spoke about the need for leadership, criticizing Trump's message of dominance, instead calling for communities to stand together. We don't want ignorance to ruin what we've got here in Houston. And speaking for my colleagues across the country where their officers are being injured, community members are being injured, he said, "It's time to be presidential and try not to be like you're on The Apprentice. This is not Hollywood. This is real life, and real lives are at risk." Well, he certainly doesn't mince his words, does he? I quite like this fella, speaking a lot of truth. Acevedo said it's time to shift this action to where it needs to be, the voting booth. He cites the reason for the protests was because too many people who are damaging property never bothered to vote. In the 2016 US presidential election, the black voter turnout fell for the first time in 20 years to just under 60%, despite recording an all-time high of 66.6% in the previous presidential election in 2012. However, prior to the election, 14 states implemented new voting restrictions, which included restricting voter registration, strict voter ID requirements, and limited early voting. Federal judges found Republicans in the state of North Carolina suppressed black voter turnout with, quote, surgical precision. Let's engage and let's do what we can control, which is our own actions, our own hearts, and exercise without failing our right to vote. Acevedo has called on protesters. You have a choice. Lift up your voice, be heard in the voting booth, and continue to march peacefully. So the focus remains on bad policing, criminal policing. He says the inequality in America, and this is very true, is not just about policing, it's about society. He references education, health, access to food, and, quote, everything that we as human beings hold near and dear. So please don't react to Trump. Instead, Acevedo says, the only thing that will happen to overcome hate is love and engagement. Let's engage and let's do what we can control, which is our own actions, our own hearts, and exercise without failing our right to vote. Interesting that, because recently we had I saw on one of Eric Jose's, I think it was his Doctor Who channel, interviewing a gentleman who I think he pointed out that he doesn't vote because he has then that he feels that by not voting you then have the right to criticize, and that by voting you then lose that right to criticize because you voted. I don't subscribe to that point of view. However, I do have tremendous sympathy for the public in America, and likewise to the public in the UK, in England in particular. It looks as if Scotland is going to be going independent at some point fairly soon. Basically there was a choice in England between Corbyn or Johnson. Boris and Corbyn. I can't even remember his name. He's that standout of a character, and I don't think he's going to carry on as the Labour leader. But when you're faced with two not particularly good characters, but then you contrast that with America, and they had a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And again, you feel sorry for the people, because there were some people that just would not vote for one side just because they, although they didn't agree with the other side, it was just beyond them to vote for the other person. I think that happened on a couple of occasions. So anyway, I do have sympathy for those that are faced with that dilemma of who do you vote for. As I say, I remember distinctly when the day before the presidential election in 2016, that was the general consensus of opinion of a lot of people in the UK, that they really they're at a loss as to although they didn't, the majority of people I spoke to did not want. They thought it would be a disaster if Donald Trump won, but on the other hand, they were saying, that it might not be that brilliant if Hillary Clinton had won. Anyway, the next day, one of the old fellas that I teach came in and said, I said to Jeff, how are you doing? He said, I'm great. Not only have we now, because we just had the Brexit vote a couple of months earlier, and the UK was leaving Europe. He said, but now America has got a proper president. I wonder what Jeff is thinking about his proper president at the moment, seeing as Jeff was a former retired police officer and had experience of dealing with crowd violence and large crowds. As I say, here in the UK, we've had football hooliganism for quite a while. So anyway, we look forward to, as I say, looking ahead. Kathleen Zellner hopefully getting her wish to have a bit more time to hopefully completely destroy the state's response. Although I would imagine that the bulk of her response she already knew what they were going to say. So I'd imagine a lot of what she is going to reply with she'd already written. But I'm sure it'll probably be a case of look at the cases that have been cited by the state, and really go to town on what they are actually saying. It's interesting, isn't it? It's quite interesting how you've got all these experts in Making a Murderer 2 that Kathleen engages with and hires. But of course, we know for a fact that she also keeps in touch with a lot of sometimes retired but other solicitors and seeks their advice. And I can't help imagining that that's exactly what she is doing right now. So who have we all got here? We've got Alice, Cherie, Sharkbait himself. Hi, Mark. How you doing? Yes. And anyways, sorry, Mark. I've just finished. So what you need to do is rewatch from the beginning. Now, hold on a sec. It's 3 o'clock here. It must be virtually midnight for you. So if you're suffering from insomnia, just choose any of my videos, any from the from the list, and I'm sure they'll do the job nicely. Anyway, I'm gonna say cheerio for now. I've got some more lessons to do, and I've got another music video that I need to do fairly soon. I will endeavour to put midnight. I will endeavour to put the two articles in the link in the comments. So yes, in the description. That's the word I'm looking for. In the description below. So as I say, thank you all for joining in. We'll see you again soon, and take care. Bye for now.